In this video, we'll go all over the process of post-production for San Juan de Dios image. I want to begin with this chapter talking about some stuff that I would like to point out. One of the most common mistakes that people that are new in the industry are doing is that they think that the final result of the scene must come directly from the 3D program they are using. And this is a very common thing, and I wanna explain why it's a mistake. As I've been saying on every video that you've been looking, the secret of getting a nice image is to be successful in every process that you're working on at that certain moment. And these processes are the conceptual design, the texturing, the modeling, the lighting, and of course, at the end, the post-production. And looking at an image like this one of San Juan, we need to see it as a series of little battles that we have to solve in each process. It doesn't stop with having a good 3D. We have to have a very nice post-production process later. And in a couple of minutes you'll notice that it's a very important process. It's simple, but not many people take that serious, this part of a project. Okay, here we have now the actual render that comes out directly from our 3D program. As you can see, the result is very nice. We have a very good resolution to work with. But I'm pretty sure that we can make a lot of the things in this image way better. And the next decisions that we will be taking over on our image are directly related on what we research all the way back to the reference images. The first thing I notice is that we're low on saturation and contrast values, and this will be one of the first things that we'll be taking care of. What we'll try to do is to get as close as we can to this result. You can see the switch between the images, and you'll notice that we'll be doing very simple things that we'll be working on Photoshop. The first thing we're going to do is to analyze how we make the general color correction, and I'm pretty sure you'll notice they are quite simple things that we would do now. The first thing that I like to do when I'm working on an image on its color correction is to define our hue or white balance or whatever you would like to call it on your overall scene. And by this I'm working with some of the hue and saturation or color balance in a layer on Photoshop. In this specific case, I did it with values of color balance. And if you put a little attention, what I did with this modifier is to take out some of the yellowish tint. As you can notice, the image had a lot of yellow and a lot of reds. And with this color balance process, I just took it a little bit more closer to the blue, and that's it on what the color balance did. Just to make it a little bit colder, make the image a little bit closer to the blue part of the spectrum. My next step is to balance the shadow and light. For this, I mainly use the levels tool in Photoshop to correct this. I'll turn off all these other ones before we see it. And if you can see, compare it with the reference images, if I turn on and off this levels correction, it gets very close to what we have on the photographs. And you see that by having a specific color correction, I can get us very close to what I was aiming in my references research. You can notice that the changes in the image are not that extreme, but they take us very close to the reference. The last part of this process of color correction is that I felt that some of the parts of the scene they were very dark, just like here, over here, they got too dark for me. And some of the things that the photographers know is that the shadows on the background are not as hard or not as deep as the ones on the foreground. This is what's happening here, and I really need to solve this, and there are many ways to solve it. The easiest way on an image, of course, is to add another color corrector, and maybe just adding some lightness or some level corrector. Another way would be to make a 3D pass of fog. And with this fog pass, you can control the intensity of the shadows, or it can even done by a sea depth map. In this case, I went to the color corrector because it's a still image. It won't be moving. And what I did is just add a little bit of lightness in the overall. And you'll notice that most of my color corrections and most of my processes will be controlled by masks. And what I did with this color corrector is to take out some of the deepness of the shadows that I have here in the background, in the farther part of the image. With these color corrections and just adding a little vignette, I'm getting even more closer to what I had originally on my references. And you notice they are extremely simple things you can do. And now I'll step over to a little bit more delicate things and not that obvious. Let's take as an example the floor. At some point I felt that the floor needed a lot more detail on it. And I noticed this because of the references I had, and I decided to do this on post-production and not adding detail on the actual texture that it's used on the 3D software. And mainly because I didn't want it to render the whole image again. The actual process of adding this kind of detail is, as a fact, very simple too. I'll turn off some of my layers and I'll be turning them on one by one so you can see what's adding in the scene. The first layer I want to show you is this one that generates this kind of big crack all over the floor. If I'm not wrong, this image was from a personal stock photo from a picture from the street. I kind of know what kind of cracks and creases I wanted in the image. It was getting very hard to get one of image that could be useful because of the perspective and the specifics of the crack, so it's easier to get around the block and take some pictures. And the trick is on putting this image. You can look at better the image around here and use a soft light. Usually I always do this with the details. I use the layer mode soft light, and you can see it looks great. No fancy tricks. As you can see, I'm just controlling where I don't want this to be applied. Again, using masks. Simple black and white masks. I'll put it again on soft light. And we're getting great results from a simple photograph I took just a couple of streets from my house. There are some other cracks here that I have closer in for the foreground. Again, it's a photograph I have over here. And this picture was taken, if I'm not wrong, just in front of the office. And at the end, the detail that it puts here, it's very nice, looks pretty convincing. Again, I just applied it as a soft light. The result is great. There's nothing fancy about this. It's just taking all the saturation on the image and use the right layer mode for it, and you'll get great results on them. Other details on the floor that at some point they are bigger and they're in a lot of places. They were also applied as soft light. And of course I had to mask out all the things that I didn't want the texture to affect. I know these are very simple things, but there are things that will give the spectator a lot of detail, and it will make very convincing to him. The next things that I enhanced are some of these lights that are here that I wanted to make them brighter. I'll show you more or less what I did for achieving this. There were areas in my image that I felt that they were overexposed or underexposed, and for that I added specific color correctors for one of each areas. Here you can see I'm switching. There are parts of the image that are too bright, and for this I used mainly an exposure color corrector for this and its mask. And the mask is hand painted where I wanted more light or where I wanted a little bit more shadows. Let's take a look at the mask here again. Simple black and white mask. Just remembering from the other chapters, in CGI, white means yes and black means no. In this specific case, what this means is that this white part does get the color correction, and where it's black, it doesn't have any effect on the image. That's why when we switch, the color correction is not applied on all over the image. It's just in the areas where it's white or black in this case. There are of course some other things that I would like to point out. For example, this part here with the bananas, I was losing a lot of detail because of the shadow that was coming out here, so I added another color corrector and make a black and white mask for this area. On the same way, I did a little bit more general color corrections in this area. I had some highlights that I wasn't really fond of them. I simply took them out by lowering a little bit the exposure here. And of course there are some other even more subtle color corrections. Just like this one, let me get a little bit more closer to the image so we can see it better. Just around here. As you can see, there's a little bit of variation on the actual color of the banana. And that actually it's coming from this color corrector here. If you pay particular attention, you'll notice that this banana and this other one changed to green. And I did this because all the bananas had the same texture in 3D, so I wanted a little bit more variation to make the image a lot more real, to give it more photorealistic sensation. Of course, this process I did it for some other fruits. I just did a little bit of green color correction and I painted the mask here just to define the areas or the bananas where I wanted. The next color corrections were also focused more or less, more than anything, on the fruits. Well, I noticed at some point that these tomatoes over here for me look a little bit of washed away, if we can say it that way. And mainly what I did is just to add a little bit of saturation on them, simply with another color corrector. The same thing happens here, and now with these cherries that we have over here. I really didn't enjoy that much the color they already have. For me, they were too red. I wanted to add a little bit of blue on them. And again, I did a mask and specific for this part. There were also another color correction process here for specific elements, in this case the doll that is sitting here. In the actual 3D render, the hair of it looked like a little bit gray, so I paint a mask again and color corrected to make it darker. Okay, that's what I think it's more relevant on what I did on the color correction and some lights enhancing in the image. The next thing that I thought the image would benefit from is that I'm sure it needed some contact shadows. Many of you should know that this, of course, is generated by an occlusion pass, and this is generated, of course, in the 3D. This is what comes out from from the actual 3D render. And what I did is just put this pass as multiply, and with this you'll notice that we'll be getting contact shadows between the objects. And let's take a closer look in this area of the image so you can see it better. Now if you can see, if I turn on or off the pass, we get more contact information on the apples and the watermelon. You can see it here, of course, and well, for the viewer, unconsciously this will give a better lecture of the scene and will give it, of course, better final quality on it. You can notice that in the oranges there's a big enhancement on them. Some guys in our studio tint a little bit this pass for getting some other kind of results, but in this in this case it's not necessarily. Well, the next step was to make some enhancement on specific elements, just like in this case the scale. When I saw the scale, I was certain that I wasn't getting the reflection that I wanted to get. And well, the actual process of getting this reflection was quite simple. I took some pictures from the internet, from classes, and I add them as a specific layer mode. I'll show you the picture. And here you can see that here it's the actual cutout of the image I found on internet. What I just simply did was cut it out, put it in the place where I wanted, and add it as linear dodge. And well, I also added some extra reflections here. You can take a look. This is the image, the actual image I got from internet, and I simply added in the area and used a different layer mode for it to work. After I got pleased with the result from the reflections on the scale, I went to a little bit of more complex corrections, just like this, that I wanted to get a little bit more of light coming out from these big areas. And this is almost a real photographic effect that you get when you take a picture with this kind of backlight. And it's very simple to create. Let me show you. As you can see, I have something like these 3 layers that create the effect. The first layer, I'll put it here as the normal mode so we can see exactly what's going on. Notice that it's all this zone that we have. Of course, controlled again by a mask. And I'll show you how I did it. I'm gonna make a copy of my image so we can work on this one and not touching the original. This is a good tip. If you want to make a copy of all the things that are on your image, first you have to make a selection with Ctrl A. Now I have a selection of my whole image, and then I hit on my keyboard Ctrl Shift C so I can copy all that's on the screen. I'll wait a second so the copy is made, and then I'll paste everything that it's coming out from the selection. I'll paste it here, and what I've got, it's a copy of all the information I have in my scene. And then what's coming next is to put it as a linear dodge or add, and then I'm gonna blur a little bit the image. So what I want to do is to make like the light is bleeding from this part of the image, so the blur will be quite big. I think now we're getting close to what I already have in the other image. And of course I don't want the effect on all over the place. I just want it on the main entrance of light. So I'll be adding a mask to this image. And then the way I work is to paint all over it a black. So later on I have quite good control over the image. I'm gonna paint the mask with white. I'll pick a very soft brush and big too. And then I'll start to paint exactly in the areas where I want to show this layer. As you can see, as I'm painting, I'm showing off the layer that it's on linear dodge mode. It's very useful, this kind of layer mode, when you're trying to paint some light over your scenes. It's very close to the way that actual light works when it adds over an object or an element. So I'll start painting here so I can start to show the layer here. And as you can see, we get very convincing result, and it's a very simple way to work. This also should happen in the lamps over here, and maybe these little lights here. As you notice, it's a very simple technique and works very nice. So now I'll turn off this previous layer, and I'll show you what happens next. As you can see, I have some some other more layers here, so I can make more evident borders here. And well, I think with all these color correctors, light effects, and specific elements, I can get very close now to the reference I had at the beginning. I hope this technique is useful for you. Now, just to wrap up, I'm going to show you the last details I'd add to the image. Now, as you can see, this is the result I got from the actual renderer. And this is the result I'll have for the final image after some enhancements. At some point, I was missing something after all that we went through. And they are all very, very subtle things. For example, in my case, I thought the wood would need a little bit more of dirt on it. And this is what I did on this last file. I also added a little bit more of variation on these fruits here in the foreground. I will show you the process a little bit later. And finally, I added a little bit more global color correction so I can make this image look a little bit more with a little bit more light on it. I thought it was a little bit dark. Okay, I'll go over them a little bit fast so you can see what happens. For starters, I added a little bit of more exaggerated bloom effect over the lens bloom, if you can call it, over the image. And it was as simple as blurring the image and adding as screen mode over it. And then I painted some mask to make this effect even more notorious, more noticeable. And later I added a little bit more small details like this, and I painted a mask so we can control it very precisely. Let me show it for you. And with these color corrections, oops. And all this work was specifically for making a more photoreal image, of course. And also with a lot of better mood. The last layers I added were mainly enhancement to the wood. Let me just get close to one of these details. Oops, it seems that the image it's quite big at this moment for this machine. And well, the process here, it was almost the same that we work the details on here on the floor. I simply just pick up a photograph and I put it just as soft light. And this same process I just repeated all over the wood. I thought it would need some work. It seems that this exposure doesn't make anything else. And well, working on this little bit of post-production processes, I made a good enhancement on the scene, on working on all over the place. At some point of the process, I decided to take out these lamps that were up here because of the composition. They drew some attention and didn't make much sense. So I took them out in Photoshop. So I hope with all this small way of working around your image and color correcting will help you understand what I did. It's simple for me, and I hope it's simple for you too. I'm pretty sure you'll start taking more advantage of these techniques, and you'll be doing it a lot more on your own scenes after this explanation. Of course, at some point you'll develop your own style or your own way to work. So I hope they're useful for you. These are the ones that work for me, and I hope you'll be using them a lot in your future scenes. See you on the next chapter. That it's the conclusions, and thanks a lot. A lot. A lot.